Hey everybody, it's Dan Mori with Staffing Monthly, and I want to create this video to teach three things that I shared as a follow-up to my session at the Staffing Sales Summit. Some of the questions I got were actually more around how do you hire a salesperson, and then how do you train them and get them up to production, and what are some of the goals you might have for them for the first year. So the three things that I'm going to share with you today: first, how do I profile and pick a salesperson? What is the best method that I've learned over the years of hiring salespeople from the most successful salespeople that I've hired, learning lessons from the ones that didn't work out so well? So I'm going to share with you what my unique model is, and maybe you can apply it to your own business. I'm also going to share with you what my first 15 weeks on the job looks like for a salesperson, and really what my go, no-go system is to make sure that they actually became a long-term successful producer in my staffing company. And the third thing that I'm going to share with you is what post probationary period looks like, and some of the goals that I have for sales producers in their first year. So first and foremost, when I'm hiring a salesperson, I do not want to hire from the industry. That's not saying that you don't have good salespeople that work for you, or there's not good staffing salespeople out there. There absolutely are. However, there are way more bad salespeople in the staffing industry, and it's not really their fault. Most of them just haven't been trained properly, right? Most of them don't really have the best tools, resources, or clarity around the unique value proposition of their agency to really sell based on value. So that being said, some of these salespeople, while are good people, they've developed some bad habits, and it's very hard to untrain those bad habits and get them up to production quickly. So I tend to stay away from salespeople in the industry. Plus, I'm a firm believer that if the salesperson was really, really good, that their agency's not going to let them out of the building, right? They're going to keep them there doing what they can to help grow. So that being said, that's my first bar, is I don't really like to hire from the industry. So where do I go to hire good salespeople? I will tell you, I like industries that are fast paced. They require a bit of grit. They require a short-term memory where you cannot necessarily let the negative interaction with one customer bleed right into the next one. That helps with those sales reps that hear the word no. Okay, I like to hire people that have a personality and are curious and genuinely want to engage with people and ask really good questions and want to know about them. These are the behavior traits that translate really well into a salesperson that's going to ask really, really good questions of the client, that has a genuine interest to wanting to know about that client. That's going to bode really well for our question-based sales process, especially when it comes to value selling, so they can identify, what does the prospect view is valuable, and then how do you align that with the unique value proposition that we have, okay? So some of the specific industries that I like to pull out of, I love the hospitality industry. I feel like people that work in hospitality, they generally are underappreciated, overworked. They have a lot of grit. They've typically got, good personalities. They're resilient, all those traits that make for a good hustler salesperson, and especially in hospitality, because they have to typically work at a really fast pace, and they typically have to go from task to task to task, and sometimes changing mindsets. So they're usually pretty good thinking on their feet. They're good in different situations, different variety of customers. So a lot of transferable skills that will actually carry them really well into our model. Within the hospitality industry, I do like food service. I especially like people that have been bartenders. I think people that bartenders, they really have to think on their feet really quickly. They have to read a customer, know how to interact, and it's going to be like different customer, and they got to basically, keep up with all of the demand, especially on a busy night. So these are some of the professions that I like. I also especially like people that work for like enterprise or car rental places. They typically have good training programs, and these are positions that the people have to have good customer service skills, good technology inventory management skills. They also have to deal with complaints a lot. And they also, most people don't realize this, a lot of these people that you see when you're renting your car and you're picking it up from the counter at the airport or whatever, they also are likely the same person that had to fill the car up with gas, clean the car, and do all of that dirty work, which leads me to the next thing that I really like when I'm targeting somebody to go do sales in the staffing industry. I like to find somebody that is doing a gritty, kind of hard, tedious, kind of annoying or frustrating job where they might feel underappreciated, overworked, that kind of stuff, to where moving to the staffing industry to where it's a little bit more professional sales. It is going to be 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, typically, right? It's, better hours, and they're going to get value out of that. You're going to get value out of not having to work weekends and work late nights, right? And I know that was one of the greatest things that I got when I got in the staffing industry is I loved not having to work nights and weekends anymore, right? So I look for people that find value in that for 2 reasons. One, you don't have to pay for that value. That's something that's important and valuable to them about the job that you don't have to pay for. That's inherent to the role. And 2, if they do like to moonlight and you don't have a policy against it, it still gives them the freedom to maybe pick up a couple shifts, bartending or waiting tables or whatever, if they really want to make some extra money or they like it. So that's what I like about this. When it comes to targeting them, I'm always recruiting salespeople. Like every time I interact with anybody, I'm actually assessing them. Do I think they would be a good fit in our company? And I'll explain how we define good fit in a second, how we assess that. So I'm always doing that process. We have a targeted recruitment model as well. So because we have a really clear ICP for what our ideal candidate profile is for a salesperson, if you've seen my talent mapping model, you know what this is. I'm also going to be talking about it in a couple of weeks with Staffing Hub, breaking down the entire model in a workshop. But we basically have a targeted recruitment model that we always are pipelining salespeople. And we're building some level of communication and relationship with these people well before we might even invite them to interview, right? So once we go to interview, we will charge all of our recruiting models. We'll look at our bench, our database, our targeted recruitment model plan, referrals. If we're a little bit light, we might even go out to job boards. Not my favorite source for hiring internal talent, but in a pinch, it can work. But with that, once we get them, I have a multi-phase interview process. My first interview, it's exactly the same across the board. This is my level setting interview process, and I'm asking the same exact questions to everybody, and I'm grading them. So everyone's sort of getting a score. I'm identifying the green flags, yellow flags, red flags. Anybody with red flags during the first interview, that's it. They don't go on, right? Green, yellow is acceptable, and I'll talk about how I clear that out. What I'm really looking for here is to make sure they're a good fit for the organization. So I used to use assessment tools like DISC and Divine, and I think they're great. I think if you have an assessment model that you are currently using or you like, they're super valuable. We did this so much with all of the hiring of all of our positions, we realized that it was 80% of the way there. However, it was still a bit generic, right? Because it's a huge industry-wide data set. The staffing industry is incredibly fragmented, right? There's 26,000 plus staffing agencies just in North America alone, right? So when you look at that, there's a lot of nuance into each individual agency that was like the last 20% that these assessments weren't really identifying. So what we did is we actually looked at all of our top producers, as well as our mid-tier and our bottom-tier producers. We looked at everybody, but we especially focused on asking the question, what makes the top producers great in our company? And we identified a few key characteristics, things like management preference, right? Some people like to be micromanaged, some people like to be macromanaged. We looked at team preference. Some people they're very individualistic, they're all about them, they're just an individual performer, producer. And then there's people that are more team-centric, right? And we started, plotting these characteristics out across a couple of four squares. And then we had a clear profile of what we were looking for, And obviously we have multiple characteristics, but to give an example, in our company, we see that people that are more team-centric, that like macro level management, tend to outperform those that are individualistic and or like to be micromanaged, right? Just based on our culture and how we're set up. So we start to ask those questions in that first interview to really find out where do they fit on our 2 4 squares as far as our ideal profile. And then we have those other questions that are going to identify, can they do the job? Will they get the results doing this job for our company that they might have gotten in their last company? Is it going to translate, right? And we're trying to figure that out. Once we narrow the list down, we do take the top 3 to 5 scored or ranked people, move it into a second interview process. Here, it's all going to be a custom interview. Every single person is going to get a customized interview, and it might actually include other people from the team. It might include other salespeople, managers, maybe other recruiting producers, people they might have to work with, because we're a very team-centric, organization, right? So with this, then we ask these questions, and our goal is to affirm the green flags and address the yellow flags. We want to get everybody into the green category. And then once we do this, the one that we feel the strongest about, sometimes two, right? But the one we feel strongest about is who we're going to move forward with. If we're a little bit unsure, or we have two really strong candidates and we're like, man, this could go either way, we're not quite sure, like there's pros and cons both ways, we typically will hire both of them. And here's our philosophy on this. If you hire two good salespeople and one of them washes out in the first 90 days, you still got one. You don't got to backfill that. The position is filled. Yeah, it might have cost you a little bit more on the front end, but it will save you a lot on production in the back end, right? So that's our model. Or let's say both of them kill it. There's literally no such thing as a problem of having too many good salespeople, right? Even if it's in the same market, So that's our model if we get two really good ones. But usually you get one person that just shines, like they really check all the boxes. They seem like the best fit for your organization, So we go ahead and make them an offer. So that's the first thing that I wanted to teach you is how do I profile, how do I recruit, how do I get them to I'm like ready for them to start, right? Item number 2, this is what we do, okay? Our onboarding process, or really kind of getting up to ramp process, is 15 weeks. The first 2 weeks, sometimes we will condense it to one if they're a quick study or if we're rolling into a campaign or a project, but 1 to 2 weeks, usually 2. And the goal of this is not just to teach them how to do sales or teach them how to use our software or what our process is. We're trying to lay the foundation to teach them to be staffing professionals. I want them to be able to walk into a client's location and ask really good questions and understand what the answers are and know exactly what they're looking for and learn how does our solution solve the problem that our clients face. I want them to know these things. I want them to be a real staffing professional. So over a 2-week period of time, what we're doing a lot in the first week is about the industry. The origin of the industry. Who are the big players out there? What are the markets that are serviced? What size of the workforce does staffing actually encompass? What does the gig economy look like? What role do we play in the staffing industry? What are our target markets? What are the challenges that our target clients, our ICP, ideal client profile, what do they face? And how does our services solve that problem? Right? We teach them how all of these things work, and we're teaching them, it's almost like a mini MBA, right? They're really learning the business application of it. In week 2, we get more into the direct selling piece of this. We're teaching them exactly how to perform in their role. So they got the foundation of being a staffing professional. They understand the industry to a much deeper knowledge. They understand things like, bill rates and pay rates and gross margin and burden and how we make money and all of that stuff. They're going to learn all of it. Then we move into sales. We're teaching them about targeted campaigns and what our ICP is and the pain points and the solutions and the desired outcome and all of that stuff we're teaching them. And we teach them how to build targeted campaigns. We teach them how to do all of the techniques within the targeted campaigns, like the cold call, like the email outreach, how to set up templates, when to use templates, how to use Source Whale, right? That's one of our tools. How to use their own email, like how to use their phone, right? So we're teaching them how to do all of these things and to be an expert. And they get to practice. There is a lot of role practice that is required before we activate a sales rep to go live into the field. We will not let them practice for the first time on a live prospect. That is just foolish. It's just bad business. So they have to go through and they got to call a lot of their peers and other department colleagues, and they've got to make a bunch of cold calls, and they got to send a bunch of emails, and they got to have business meetings, right? Sales meetings. And those colleagues are trained to score them on a rubric. And we have to get above a certain level before we're willing to say, okay, you're ready. You're activated to go out into the field, right? You're validated. For my fellow veterans or military personnel out there, you know what it's like. If you're going to go into theater, you have to go through all the validation process. Same way we practice this here. Make sure they're ready to go out there and represent the brand and positively talk to customers, right? Once they're good, it is their responsibility to build their first targeted campaign. That's the first 2 weeks. What we do in the next 13 weeks is we run 3 30-day targeted prospecting campaigns. Okay? For campaign 1, No goals. We just set out a prospect number. It's a little bit arbitrary depending on what we think for the market, what we're trying to do. And we just let them go. No quotas, none of that. We are looking for two things. Can they do the work? And can they follow a system? That's it. That's all we want to know. And if they can't do that, if they don't show us that they can actually do the work, that they're willing to put in the reps and follow the system, right, without deviating off course or making excuses why it didn't get done, if they're willing to do those two things, we can work with them. If they don't do those two things within the first 30 days, it is a no-go. We're done, right? If they can't do those foundational things, they're never going to do anything else. But let's say they do those things and they pass. Campaign 2. This is the second 30-day campaign. We build a targeted, campaign for them to run with them. We help them build it. They approve it. We're teaching them how to do this because we want them to be self-sufficient. We still do not set goals, but we are going to set some soft targets based on what we learn in the first 30 days. We're going to say, based on your input, we think that you're going to get this number of meetings, maybe this number of proposals, maybe this number of contracts back, so on and so forth, right? We're starting to build out the cookbook or the sales activity tracker, right? So once we're done with that, we review it, and we want to know what we're looking for is, did they keep doing the work? Did they still follow the system? And how close was our forecast, our guess, right? Then from there, we take all of that information and then we build the third campaign. This one, the stakes are higher. This one, they actually have targets for the number of meetings and proposals and contracts we want them to be able to get within that 30-day period of time. Depending on the target market, the sales cycle, and all of that, we might actually have them have GM targets in that 30-day period. If you have longer sales cycle, you might only have meetings, right? But you adjust fire based on that. So then we turn them loose. So now you get to the end of the third campaign, which is the end of their probationary period. And it is a 3-part evaluation. It's a yes, all boxes checked. You did the work all 3 times. You followed the system brilliantly. You progressively got better. And we were pretty accurate on your output. We kind of were pretty close on the number of meetings you got, the number of proposals you sent out, the number of contracts you got back, so on and so forth. We're pretty good with our goals. We feel good. Everything is checked. Boom. You're validated. You're activated. You are out in the field full time, right? Let's say it's close. Let's say they did all the work, but they didn't quite get the results, right? They followed the system, they did the work, but the results are just not quite there. Maybe their pipeline looks good, but nothing's really popping. We go to PIP. That's what we do, right? We're going to do either 30, 45 days. I don't like to go too much longer than that, right? And PIP, Performance Improvement Plan, this is not a negative thing. I hate that there's so much negative connotation about this out in the world in general, but especially in the staffing industry. This is not the tool that you use to protect yourself for firing somebody. Stop doing that. A PIP is a performance improvement plan. I promise you, it is a whole lot easier to improve your current salesperson than it is to find a new one and train them up, right? So work with them. Have a custom plan that is designed for you and them to work together to get the optimal desired results, right? And give it your best effort. You'll be shocked. A lot of times it will work out and they will see value in that PIP. It's literally just a very structured coaching plan for a professional and for athletes out there, people that like sports. It's like when, maybe one of your players gets the yips and they kind of got to dial the playbook back a little bit, right? It's like, hey, let's just focus on these plays right here that we know will make you be successful. And once you get your confidence back, once the results start coming, then we'll open things back up. That's what a PIP is. It's designed to optimize performance. So if they're really close at the end of that probationary period, we'll go to PIP, 30, 45 days, custom plan, check-ins, coaching, all of that stuff to develop them. But let's say they don't. Let's say they follow the system or they don't, or maybe they don't get the results. Whatever it is, it's just not even close. We just move on. Point blank. Like if they don't show that they can do the work, follow the system, and get some level of predictable results within the first 15 weeks of employment or first 90 days in the field, it's not likely going to happen, right? It's just the late bloomer is the rare exception in this industry when it comes to sales. You kind of either have it or you don't. Yes, there are people that take a little bit longer to get up the ramp and then they crush it. That does happen, right? But the more likely scenario, unfortunately, is the person that just basically gets up to mediocre and that becomes their ceiling, dragging your entire organization down, right? It is a lot better just to move on and just to part ways as friends and just say, hey, listen, We gave it everything we had. We tried, it didn't work out. It's not the right fit. We would rather part ways as friends and support you in finding whatever you're going to be great at. And then we can go find the person that's best suited for this role. So it's a win-win for everybody versus just keeping you here and probably going to be miserable with mediocre results. And I'm going to be miserable having to try to manage you beyond mediocrity. Like, that's not good for anybody, right? So if they don't pass the 90-day probationary period, we're done. We just move on. And it's okay to do that. You know, that phrase, hire slow, fire fast, is there for a reason. Okay, so that's thing number 2 that I wanted to teach you today is our process for getting people up to ramp. And the third thing, and this is going to be the quickest, so I appreciate if you're still here sticking around for this, goals. How do you know what to set for goals? I'm going to show you how I do this. If you can translate it to your business, that's awesome. If you're not quite sure how to do it, feel free to leave a comment, hit me up on LinkedIn, email, whatever it is. I definitely want to help you with this area. But myself and many of the top thought leaders in the industry that coach in sales, like the Mark Winter, the Tom Erb, all those people, we all sort of agree that a new sales rep should be able to produce 3 to 5x their cost to the organization in GM within their first year, right? So if they cost you $50,000 as an example, they should be able to produce somewhere between $150,000 and $250,000 of gross margin in their first year, right? So this is what we do. I don't just give people a gross margin target because most people, especially if they're newer to this industry, it's a little bit tricky to understand how does the money happen? How does margin happen? Even though we teach them to them, it's still a little bit of a foreign concept. So we break it down into the language of the producer. So we will tell them on average, our new client's first year gross margin is X. So based on your goal range of 150,000 to 250,000 in this example, you would need to acquire this many clients. And then we just look at the conversion ratios from their campaigns and we say, in order to get this many clients, you're going to have to get this many contracts back. And to get this many contracts back, you're going to have to submit this many proposals. In order to get this many proposals, you're going to have this many meetings. In order to get that many meetings, you're going to have to do this many prospecting touches. And then they can see how everything connects. And now they understand why they're doing the work, why they have to do the number of reps they have to do. And then we tell them the better you get at the reps, the less reps you're going to have to do. And that gives people the incentive to actually hone their craft and get better at it so they can actually achieve higher results or achieve their satisfactory results with less work, right? Either one is pretty satisfactory to a sales manager. So that's how we manage the goal process and actually goal setting for the inputs and outputs that we're looking for. Hopefully you found this valuable. If you did, leave a comment here, like this video, subscribe to the channel. It would mean a lot to me. It would help us out a ton. And if you've got additional comments, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn, send me an email, or again, you can comment right here. Thank you.